In this tutorial, we're going to cover the step-by-step process you'll need to follow in order to set up an A1 presentation landscape poster as per the example on screen. Now, you'll need a bit of software to set up an A1 sheet. So for this example, I'm going to use INKSCAPE and GIMP to do a lot of the image handling and post-processing and the setting up my sheet. So GIMP, I will process a lot of the images, and then INKSCAPE, I will then use it to set up an A1 sheet and organize everything on my A1 sheet. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is go and open up INKSCAPE. Please get the latest version of INKSCAPE. I've got the latest version running on my machine, and you can see it's pretty intuitive. They've really done a lot to make the software more user-friendly. Okay, so I'm going to start a new document. Now, once you start a new document, you'll notice that there's a sheet setup. Just leave everything as is by default, because we'll talk you through whereabouts you'll go and set up everything. But firstly, we can go into document properties. We can go and look at all these settings and set it up correctly. But remember, all of those settings can be found as you start the program as well. Depending on how your view is set up, depending on the size of your display, sometimes with laptops, a lot of these tools get quite squished, so they're hard to find. So remember, there's an arrow here. You need to go and find more of those tools over here. But I'll talk you through these tools step by step, and I would advise you to follow some other INKSCAPE tutorials which will help you get familiar with the software. Okay, but in essence, the first thing we need to do is set up our appropriate sheet size. So I'm going to go to document properties, and here I'm simply going to go and select A1. Okay, and here it's going to ask you orientation, landscape, portrait. I'm going to say portrait for now. Okay, so you'll notice in the display, it's already set that up. If I close this and I zoom out, so control and use the wheel mouse button, you'll be able to zoom in and out. Just remember, you've got these different options as well. Zoom in and out, you can fit to screen. And there are other tools around the display, so just familiarize yourself with all these other tools that you can see. Okay, but in a nutshell, I'd use the control wheel mouse button. Another application you could use for this was Illustrator if you've got the Adobe suite. But the process that we're going to follow is very much similar. So, all right, so we've got our sheet set up. Now the next thing I need to do is set up some guides. I need to set up some sort of structure so that I can start building my A1 presentation. So it's important to have a structure. So in this instance, I'm going to use a series of grids. So if I go back to my properties, document properties, you'll notice when I go to guides, I can say create guides around page. It's a very neat tool. You can delete all the guides as well if you want to. Now that I've got all the guides set up, you will notice that you'll need a border around the sheet. If you're going to print this on an A1 printer downstairs in our print labs or anywhere else around town where you need to print these on a large format printer, you'll need a safe or a bleed border around the sheet. So for our machine downstairs, I would recommend a 5mm border around the sheet. So what's neat is once you've got your guides in place, you can literally double click on the guides. So zoom in, find the guide, and once you hover the guide, the hand will appear and you can double click. What's neat is you can say relative to change. You can use this option, or you can simply type in 5mm. I like this option. Let's double click here again at this end. Here I'm going to say, here you can simply use a bit of maths, -5, and you'll notice that it'll do the maths for you. You could also say relative. So relative to change, meaning that if I go and change the bottom one, for example, so just hover, double click. So here if I go -5, you'll notice it will change. So if we zoom in now, you'll notice we've got a nice safe border around our sheet. So this is my first bit of setup that I need to do. And the next thing is I need to put in some more guidelines. So I'm going to divide this into, let's divide this into 5 sections. So we're going to have 4 sections, and we're going to have 4 sections. So one in the middle. This is totally up to you, but adopt a structure that you're comfortable working with. So I'm going to drag another one down here and another one down here. Okay. Now you notice that these are not exactly equal, but what is great, you can use a bit of maths again. So here you're going to switch off relative. Here you're going to say 841 divided by 0.25. Sorry, my apologies, times by 0.25. So this is a quarter in essence. You'll notice that it will move. Use again. So this is 841 times by 0.5, and that will move right to the middle. And double click on this grid line, and you're going to say 841 times by 0.75. Fantastic. Now you notice that it was gone and set up my guidelines quite accurately. Let me just do these ones very quickly. Great. So here I'm going to do the same thing. So this is 594 times by 0.5. We'll get it nice in the middle. Double click on this guideline. This is going to be 594 times by 0.25. If you make a mistake at any stage, you can undo or move these guidelines and get them in the correct location. Okay, 594 times by 0.75. Okay, great. Now that you've got this grid set up, going forward, you can go and save this as a template file, and you can keep using this document. Okay, so that's totally up to you. You can keep using this document as is. All right, so let's just go back to my example. So what I've decided to do is break this up into a series, and you can see how my structure is starting to take shape. Okay, so this is quite clear. As you can see, my structure is starting to work well with the presentation type that I'm working with. Just remember, in my previous tutorial and the quiz that we did, I did discuss different types of structures and different use cases for each one of those structures. Okay, I'm just going to, because of the level of information that we need to put on the sheet, I'm going to stick to more of a structured presentation. Okay, so now that my sheet is set up, I would go and save this. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to save everything on my desktop for the moment. Call this sheet setup. Okay, so now we've got all this information set up. Now the next thing that we need to start doing and paying attention to is start loading in I want some additional information here. I need to start working with layers. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to layers. I'm going to switch on layers and objects, and you'll notice that I'll get a new tool palette here where I can manage layers. So the first one I'm going to make is images, because we're going to start pulling in a series of images, and we're going to start setting our sheet up. We're going to use a bit of GIMP as well to process and stitch images together and fix images. Okay, but for this step, just start setting up some layers. I'm going to add another. So add another layer. I'm going to call this text. Now you want to stack these layers in the correct order, but you want the text to sit above the images. So just remember, this is a draw order in essence, the way these stack up. So remember, you can use this up and arrow keys to kind of move them up and down. Okay, so you can switch to layers only in view. So there's lots of tools that you can use here, but if you go through the series of tutorials, you'll find that working with this is pretty straightforward. Okay, let's just go back to our example. So the first thing we need to do is go and find some text that we're going to work with. Okay, so we're going to pull in some text. We need a heading. Go and find the type of font you want to use, and we've got some symbology that we'll need to go and find and use. Okay, so that information I'll start pulling in a bit later, but I think for the time being, let's just get our font sorted. Let's just find some font that we're happy with and kind of get that in place. And remember, we use hierarchies of fonts, so please pay attention to my example and with respect to the hierarchies of font. Okay, all right, so the first thing I'm going to do, go to my text layer, and I'm going to go to the text tool. I want to find some font that I'm going to be using for this project. Now just remember, don't try and have too many font styles in one project, please try and stick to a consistent type of font. You can have 3 or 4 levels and changes of font, but just remember they need to read well together. Okay, so the first thing I'll go and do, just go and grab my text tool and draw a text block. So draw a text block, and you'll notice it'll start populating some information under the text layer. At any stage you can switch it on and off, and this is the grip to show you how wide this text is going to be, and this is just telling you that it's locked to that guide. You can justify your text from, change the justification, but anyway, let's just start with some text. Now typically for a heading we might work with 10 mil. Now just start typing any text. I'm just going to use the text layer. Okay, so now if you double click again, or go to the text tool and you click on the text again, you can activate this text and edit this text. So zoom in, if you double click, you can select everything. Now with text, you've got some text tools that you can use, so text and font. Here you can use some tools, so you can use this window to type some additional font, and you can just say apply and it adds it. Okay, font and features, so that's quite neat. Here you can go and explore the different types of font, and you can see what they look like. So before you apply, you can actually go through all the different types of fonts. So if you like that type of font, you can simply say apply. Okay, and it'll apply it to everything in the view. Okay, so you can see very easy, you can go and find some fonts that you'd like to use. Okay, so you can see that the font will change every time, and you remember we're going to use millimeters. We can change the units as well. Just remember we're going to use millimeters. Okay, this is my font. I'm just showing this as an example. And once you've got the font, you can go to the objects, and you can go to fill and stroke, which will open this tool. Now what's interesting is you can apply fills to text. If you remove the fills and you apply a stroke, so you can apply you can change the way the font works. You can use different fill colors, so it gives you a lot of flexibility working with fonts. It does come with some catches, so just bear that in mind. Be careful how you're going to use your font. Okay, so I'm just going to set up the font that I want to use. So I'm going to do that quickly and get back to you shortly. Okay, so the font I'm going to use is going to be MS Gothic. So go to your text tool again, and you go right down and find the font that you want to use. And you can see there is a whole lot of fonts, and you can go and download some more fonts if you want to use more fonts. So this is the font that I want to use for my project. Apply, and I want to make sure that there is only fill but no stroke. So I'm going to remove the stroke and make it fill, and I'm going to use color at the bottom here. So what's neat is if you click on the color at the bottom, if you click, it'll apply these colors as well. So here's a whole lot of colors. If you right click, it will stroke. You can set stroke in that color as well, but you notice that there's no stroke assigned, so it'll only assign. So let me just explain this. If I add a stroke as well, and I right click and I say set stroke, you'll see that the fill and stroke are the same color. But just be careful using a stroke, because a stroke could also have a width, and this could have influence the text sometimes, and you won't know why. So just remove that for now, and I just want to fill. Okay, fantastic. So I've set up my font, and that's the font I'm going to use for my project. Just delete that, go back to your layers. So here you can see your text, and what is neat is you can use the selection tool to move your font and get it in the right location. Okay, but for now I'm pretty happy. I'll add some more guidelines a bit later on. The last thing I might want to do is just lock these guidelines. So lock these very quickly. Okay, so you can go and do that as well. There's another tool. If you go to edit, document properties, guides, lock all guides. You can lock them here as well, but I'm going to lock them individually. Just means if you lock them individually, you can't So double click on this guideline. You'll see that they lock currently. So lock. You'll notice that they'll have that icon when they change. You can't. So what's neat is you can't move them. You can still snap onto them. You'll notice that when I hover, lock, lock. Okay, I'm going to lock these because it'll just prevent me from moving them on later. Lock this one. Okay, so those are all locked. You can see the ones with the X's are locked. So lock this one, lock. Okay, good. I'll lock only these. The other, I'll make additional later on, but I will use them a bit differently. Okay, so all of my guides are pretty much locked at this stage. I'm going to make that sure that's locked. Okay, fantastic. So I've got my document set up. I've got my first bit of font. The next thing I'm going to do is kind of talk you through how you go and start collecting your images, etc., etc. So once you've kind of got your document set up, you've got the font that you want to use. Remember, you can use 2 or 3 different fonts, but just be cautious. They might clash with each other. So just bear that in mind. Okay. And remember, we can use different heights and we can use different units. Okay, fantastic. So this font, I want to go to that point, more or less. That's where it'll wrap. Okay, and we can set all this other additional information. There's a whole lot of other tools we're going to use here, but we're not going to get into that for this project. It's not required. Okay. Now, what I recommend you do is work in a folder. Now, this has to be in your Google Drive. Remember, please start using your Google Drive to do this so that you don't lose your information. I'm going to use a temporary folder to do this for the time being. Okay, so here I've gone and set up a folder and I've dumped in a whole lot of images. So let's just change the view and go to extra large. Here you can see I've gone and gathered a whole lot of information. I will cover how we'll export some of this information from AutoCAD, for example. Okay, so for example, what I do in AutoCAD is I set up these on a sheet and I just simply exported this PDF. And then I'll use GIMP to cut this up and do a lot more additional post-production to these images. Okay. What's neat is this has to be on the correct size. So in AutoCAD, you're going to set up the AutoCAD file to print to scale. You're all familiar with printing your views from AutoCAD to the correct scale. So remember, any AutoCAD drawing can be put on a sheet and exported. Even if it's A3 sheets, A4 sheets, that's totally up to you. Remember, use a sheet to export your views from. Okay, especially information from AutoCAD. Okay, in addition to that, I've also got a DXF file that I made with symbols that we're going to pull in a bit later and show you how that works. It's an AutoCAD file that I've created and we'll discuss that in depth when I start using those tools. Okay, and then I've got a whole lot of renders that I've gone and produced. I'm going to start pulling this information in. Okay, so very straightforward. Then the last folder that we're going to look at is my concept sketches. So a whole lot of sketches that you will produce. I don't use all of these, but it's a series of concept sketches that I've got and sourced, and I'm going to show you how to start cleaning this information up. Okay, so then last but not least, I would go and type out the information that you need as well. So I've got a Word document where I've got it typed out. I needed some information. So you'll need to give a synopsis of your presentation or a precedent study. You're going to have to go and write up a bit of information for this project. So it needs to be embedded into the project. I've also got some examples, so I'll show you how to transfer that. So maybe that's the next thing that we'll do, just to get that information in, and we can tweak it once it's in. Okay, I've given these some additional examples which we can quickly go through. So let's just go and have a look at some different presentation techniques. So there are a lot of ways to do these posters. You need to find your own language when communicating your design ideas. Okay, but here's just some examples which I'll give to you. This is more related to the competition you're doing, and I'm going to adopt more of the same presentation technique because I think the brief requires a more structured type of presentation. Okay, here were some additional examples. Okay, once again, just remember these are great, but they are expensive to print because you're using a lot of color. So just be conscious, and sometimes the information can get lost. So just be mindful of those pitfalls. Okay, fantastic. So we've got a good overview of how this presentation is going to be put together. We've got all our content, we've got all our information together. So now we're going to start stitching the information together. So once we're back in Inkscape, I'm going to grab, so this will be my heading in essence. I'll leave this font here. I'm going to press, so you can go to edit and use the duplicate command, Control D, and you'll notice it puts another bit of text. Okay, so it'll put some more text over here. Fantastic. So, and you'll notice it'll keep the properties. What's interesting is you can change the font, but you can select this font and go to edit. You can copy the style. So if you copy and you select this font, you go to edit and you go paste style, it'll overwrite this font to match the style. So there's a lot of those tools that you can start using, which I like. Okay, so that's good to know. Let's get rid of that. Let's bring that back. My apologies. Let me just open that up again. Okay, I didn't save that, so let's just do that again. So let's bring in some font. So draw the font that you want, make sure it's on the correct layer. Okay, I'm just going to quickly recreate this layer, so my apologies. And I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call this images. Okay, so remember that will sit below and then text will sit above. Okay, so remember I'm going to use, so select my font and just type some information. Let's grab my font. Grab my font layer, my apologies, yeah. Okay, now I'm going to set that to, and just remember the fill and stroke. So remove, you don't want stroke, you want fill, and I'm going to use this gray. Okay, and stroke, it's going to be, you can apply stroke, I'm going to switch the stroke off, fill, I'm going to use a gray. Okay. So full, we're going to go with, and I'm going to make it, okay, remember you can make it translucent as well. So select everything, make it this gray color. Fantastic. So this will be my heading, and this is going to be 10 mil. Control, select everything in the text, make sure it's 10. Fantastic. And I'll wrap this for there for now. Okay. Now I'm going to grab the text, Control D, and I'm going to move it down. So if you grab text and you move it down, remember we are making duplicates the whole time. Okay, now in this text, I'm going to change all this information. I'm going to start with 3 mil for the time being, and I'm going to pull this down, and I'm going to justify this. Okay, so the text is justified. So in my text tool, I'm going to go and find my text, and here I'll need to copy in everything I need. Okay, so I've got a Word document where I've gone and typed everything out. I'm going to simply select everything. What I might do is just fix fix everything here first. Okay. You can go and do this in the... So I'm going to fix all of this in here first, just so that it... Okay, fantastic. And that I'm going to delete. So delete that, delete that, delete that. Okay, I think that will work as it is. And I'm going to grab everything. So just make sure everything reads correctly. Fantastic. Control A, Control C. Okay, copy and paste. And here we're going to paste everything. Here I'm just maybe going to move this to the end, but for now I'm just going to press apply. Okay, select everything, Control A, so double click in here, Control A, and I'm going to make sure everything reads from... Okay, fantastic. You can make this 3, so just pick a size of font that works well. Okay, so we're going to play with this a bit, just get this working a bit better. So in here we're going to go to... So in our text editor, so let's just go here, just start. So you can use this text box, which is quite neat, to start separating some of the information. What I like about this option is it gets rid of all the formatting, so you get the right just tab down once more, press apply. Okay, fantastic. Control A, double click in this box again, select all the text, Control A, make sure that it all reads in that direction, and I'm going to pull this back ever so slightly. Okay, fantastic. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this line, delete, double click on the text again, delete, and I'm going to grab this and just put this at the end. So I'll just use a space bar, get this information in. We'll fine tune everything a bit later, but for now I'm happy that this is legible and I've made it all 3 mil high. This is quite important text. There's other text that will get a bit smaller, but this is important text that we're going to use. Okay, so grab this. Now you can move this and kind of get it more or less where we need it. Okay, so as we look at our example, you'll notice that this will start looking very similar. Okay, all right, so this is an A1 caps lock A1 poster. And I can select this font and I can change that down to 3. Okay, fantastic. So this is starting to work well. For now, I'll leave it just like that. Fantastic. Okay, so we might offset this. I'll explain. We might use a border. But for now, I'm just kind of getting information in place so that we can start building our poster. So save this file, save as. I'm just going to call this step 1. Save. Okay, so we've got our font set up, we've got our text set up. I'm going to start populating this view with a series of images. So the first one I'm going to focus on is the site location plan. Okay, so if we go to our examples, okay, let's go to our working folder, site location plan. Now what I did was I went online and I literally went to OpenStreetMap and I took a screenshot of this information that I was going to use. But remember, you can use AutoCAD, you can produce these site plans any way you feel fit. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop this image in. So you literally can drag and drop it. Now you want to link the image and you can press OK. Now you can get this to the right scale, but I'm going to set up my site location in this area, and you'll notice that the image is a lot larger than the actual frame that it needs to fit in. We can crop this information, which we'll discuss a bit later. But the first thing you need to do is you notice that the color is not going to match my color scheme, for example. So I need to change this image a fraction. So just remember, because we're using links the whole time, do not change the location where you're saving this information. So you'll be working on your G drives. Make sure that these images are on good folders so you don't lose track of where these images are. If you move this image, the link will break in the document. There is a way to go and retrieve that link, which I'll just show you a bit later. But for now, so what's neat is this should have been in my mockup folder, and I'm going to say, my apologies, I'm going to leave it in this folder because there is one in my mockup folder already that I've gone and tweaked and edited. Okay, so here's my site location plan. All right, so I'm going to remove this for the time being. So remember, you can drag and drop these. I'm going to go to GIMP now and start doing some editing to these images. So I want like a grayscale scheme for some of my imagery. So I'm going to open up GIMP. And this is where we're going to start using GIMP to edit some of our images that we're going to link into INKSCAPE. So I'm going to go to File, Open. I'm going to go to that location, so D, temp. Okay, I'm going to go and find the site location plan. I'm going to open this information up. Okay, now you can see I need to get rid of some of the information that we don't require. If you wanted to scale this correctly, I would leave this information in and then simply scale it to the correct scale and then delete the image. So just remember that's 300 meters. You can go and work out the scale this needs to be and then scale the image accordingly. But I'm just going to use some of this information here. So in GIMP, first thing I'm going to do, if you don't have your GIMP, if your GIMP does not look like this, there is an option. If you go to Edit, Preferences, okay, on Toolbars, Toolbar Options, what you can do is you can show, there's a way that you can show all of the tools. So here, Toolbox. So what you can do is you can untick this group option and it'll show all the available tools that you need to work with. So in this instance, I'm going to crop. So here I'm just simply going to crop the information that I need. So crop the information that you need, and then you can simply make sure that you delete crop pixels. And if you say delete now, you'll notice that the image size would have been cropped to the correct size. Simply, once you've cropped the image, color. So what you can go and do is there's a lot of tools that you can use here. You can colorize some of the information. So you can pick color schemes that you want to focus with. You can colorize these images. Okay. So you've got those options. But what I did in this instance is I went to Hue Chrome. What I did is I removed all the color and then I played with the lightness and darkness of the image. So pick an option that works for you, and then all that you're going to do, I'm just going to pull this to the one side and switch this off as well. So I removed all the color, and if you press OK, you'll notice that the image will remain like this, and you can simply go File and Export as. You need to save these as PNGs or JPEGs. I'm working with PNGs. I have saved this already, which is this file over here. Okay, so I'm going to close this for the time being. Let's go our changes. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my folder. I'm going to go to the mockup folder, and here I'm going to go and grab my site location plan and drag it and link it in. Press OK. Fantastic. Just remember, because it's a link, at any time I can go and change this information and get rid of some information. You can see I left the scale bar here for that exact reason. Okay, but we know that we need to focus. You can scale images. Just remember, if you're going to scale images, lock the aspect ratio so that it maintains its aspect ratio. You can use control, hold down control and do the same tool as well. Okay. I like to use the lock option, and because it's not a scale, I'm not applying a scale. Typically we do add and scale. That's up to you, but just see what scale works for you. If not, you don't have to use a scale because you just want to locate the site. Okay, so I know I'm going to pretend that this is my site over here, and I've pulled the image in. Now what's interesting is this needs to be on the images layer, so I've moved it to the images layer, and you'll notice that now the font will sit above the images. Okay, that's important. Now you will notice that the image doesn't quite fit that square that I'm using. You can go back into GIMP and measure the size, but what I like about using Inkscape is you can clip these images. Okay, so for example, I can go and use a border very quickly, and I'm going to select and draw a border around. Okay, you'll notice that when you draw an object, it always maintains the last object that you've edited. So for example, here I'm going to show a stroke, and I'm going to remove the fill. So what this will do is it'll give me a nice boundary. Remember our line weights, you apply the same settings. You'll notice that it's applied a line weight around this. This will disappear. So what I'm going to do, just for the time being, I will come back and customize this again to make it work with my presentation. So you need to select the border and the image. But remember, you've got this objects tool, so you can select the rectangle and you can select the image together. Then you're going to go to object and you're going to say clip and set clip. So what this does is it will clip this image to that shape that you had drawn. Okay, so remember we created a rectangle. You can make with round corners. You can actually do quite a lot with those shapes. So any shape that you can use here, you can clip an image to that shape. Okay, so I've got the beginnings of my poster. I'm going to duplicate this, Control D, move my text down here, and here I'm going to just start adding some. So site location plan, and I'm going to change this to 5 or 7. Change it to 5. Change this to 5. Okay, good. Now we can move this to the right location. Remember, I'll discuss adding some more guidelines in soon to get this in the right location, but I'm going to leave this right over here, and it will read well. It'll read over this information. So let's just go to our example and have a look. So this is our example. You can go and add a scale if it was to scale. So for example, if you wanted to add a scale, you can go and type in scale 1 to 1000. Just remember, you'll have to scale this image. Double click and you're going to change that to 3.5. 3.5. Okay. You can make this a bit smaller just so that you can see the information that you're working with. Okay, fantastic. You can now move this up and you'll see it will start snapping. You can use snaps to snap on guidelines. I'll explain where we'll put the text shortly. So let's just move this away, and you can use arrow keys to nudge it as well. Okay, site location plan. Here's a good trick. This is spelled incorrectly. So what you can do is you can go to text, check spelling. This is very cool. You can select your language, start, and here you can see it will start finding. You can say accept. There was some, yeah, say accept. So you can go and fix a whole lot of information in this document. Okay. Fantastic. So you can do spell check. Now you can see this has worked out really well. It's fixed my spelling, and I've got my scale. Just remember, this is if you scale it, you can remove that scale if you're not going to use the scale. Okay. All right. So I've kind of got the presentation kind of coming together now. The next thing I'm going to focus on is creating some additional guidelines. So now these guidelines are to help me. I'm going to put it over this other guideline, select it, double click, and I'm going to move this again by 5 mil. So double click this and just say relative to change. I'm going to make this 2.5. 2.5. And this guideline now, I am going to give a different color. You can add colors, so select the color that you want to add. Select, or you can select a yellow and you can add that as a color. Sorry, my apologies. Double click and you can select any types of layers. You can drag and drop them. Okay, so you can add custom layers, but I'm going to use the red for now. Select this one, press OK. So now that's 2.5 away. I'm going to do the same over here. Drag and drop this onto this guideline. And I'm going to move that guideline. That guideline going to go 2.5. And change this one's color. And I'm going to grab another one. You can duplicate. So what's neat is, let me show you this. You can duplicate. So grab that. Duplicate and then drag it back. So duplicate and drag it in that direction. So this one. So let's drag this one from there. Double click again. That's going to be 2.5. And drag this one back to there. Double click and this will be minus 2.5. Fantastic. So here we can start using these tools to give you this type of these guidelines on which to snap. So likewise, I can grab another one. So let's grab one down, change its color. Okay. And then you're going to double click it again and you're going to move it minus 2.5. Okay, so we can go and set up these guidelines. So now we can start snapping this information to the correct location. Okay, fantastic. Do the same here. Say minus 2.5. Oh, sorry, that's not great. Minus 2.5. Okay, fantastic. All right, so you can see to set this up now, we've got a nice border in which we can use. Now this image, I can go and release. So select the image, right click, and you're going to release the clip. Now you can go and edit this clip. So you can select the boundary, which is this rectangle over here, and you can simply snap it to that new border that we've created. Okay, to make it fit. Fantastic. Now select that, and you can simply go to object and you can clip, say clip again. Okay. Okay, so my post is coming together. I've got some information that's going to work well. Now, I've got my site location plan. So let's quickly address how we would add a fill here. So for example, I'm going to use my pen tool and I'm going to trace the outline and I'll leave this on the images layer or the text layer. So I'm going to select the text layer and I'm going to add this information because technically this is where my site's going to be located. Okay, now that it's closed, I'm going to say no stroke and I'm going to fill it with a gray. So pick a gray that will work for you and then change the occupancy so it makes more sense and it highlights where your site is going to be. Just remember, typically we use red for this, but as long as it's legible, and I've kept some information on because technically I've tried to show the contours. So pick a fill that will work well. I'm going to leave it just like that. Fantastic. So go back to my layers and that will work. That I can move all the way down to the bottom because technically it's still above my images. Okay, great. Okay, now that's all set up. Now the next view that we're going to focus on is this view over here. Now what you can do from time to time is you can use rectangles the whole time. So if we set up one of these, we can use paths to go, and we can make a construction layer and we can set up those and delete them when we don't need them anymore. So maybe if I was going to be smart, maybe that's what I'll need to do. You can keep using these construction lines, that's totally up to you. But I'm going to make a construction tool to help me do this a bit better. Okay, so I've got some information that I can play with over here. I'm just going to grab one of these again, double click that, duplicate, select this, and pull it down, double click, duplicate, and then drag it down. So I'll into the hand appears and then drag down. Okay, so this one I'm going to move. Now just remember, you can select the one by accident, so just grab this one. You'll notice wherever you grab it, it makes a grip. So grab it here, and if you snap it here, you'll notice it makes a grip. So double click on this again, and you're going to say 2.5. You can make an image frame that works. Now that we've got an image frame set up, so what I can do, double click this, minus 2.5. Let's move it down, grab it, put it to there, double click, minus 2.5. Okay, now that we've got a frame, I can go and use a rectangle tool again and snap and create a frame. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call this construction. So just like you do in AutoCAD, we're going to create a series of layers. Okay, so this is my rectangle tool over here, and you can see when you select objects, it will show you what you've got selected. I can move that to construction. Now, these are going to use a very specific, so I'm going to say no fill. I'm going to stroke these with the color red. You can also select colors over here. Okay, so that's neat. So you can use, okay, stroke and fill. So with fill, I'm going to say no fill for now. I'm going to use the stroke. So here you can see it's created a red line. What you can do is if you right click, and you can say set stroke, it'll go to that red color. Here I'm going to change the width a bit so it's a bit obvious, and I'm going to add a dashed line. You can add in all different types of dash lines. Okay, so that's totally up to you. You can change the pattern to 4, 4, 2. It changes the width. Okay, so you can change the width of the pattern so it's more obvious. I'm going to leave it just like that, because this shape now, I can use this shape again and again and again. Okay, and I can switch that layer on and off. So if I need to, I can grab this rectangle, Control D, duplicate it, and I can move it and put it in the right location. Okay, so you can see I can use this tool. So now I can use this the whole time. Okay, and I can simply move it down 2.5. So when I move it, I can move it down 2.5, because here I can control, but it'll maintain its width. And what's neat is it will snap the whole time. And make sure you can select an object. So I'm going to use these as my construction tools going forward. Okay. All right, so I'm going to switch off my construction layer for the time being. Now, as per my example, I want to put my concept sketches together in this window over here. Okay, so before we go to GIMP and set that up in GIMP, I need to know how big that's going to be. So what's neat is there's a measuring tool. I'm going to go and grab this measuring tool and measure from there to there, and it'll give me a distance. So 410 by 146. So I'm going to go to GIMP. So open up GIMP. So new I'm going to set this up with millimeters because I'm going to use millimeters. Advanced options, make sure it's 300 dpi if you're going to print this downstairs at presentation quality. And here for width, so go back here, so we know that it's 146. So the height is 146 millimeters. It will round it off, so don't worry about that. And we know that the other dimension, you can grab this dot over here and drag it down to there, and from there. So that's 410 by 143. 143.5. So that's 143.5, and that is 410. Okay. Now that we've got this to the correct size, we can simply just say OK. Now you'll notice it's created an image to the correct scale. Now, this first layer that it brings in, you can edit this layer. You can make it an alpha layer, and you can get rid of the background, for example. So let's just say we don't want a background anymore. We want this to be a transparent. Right click and say add alpha channel, and then just simply hit delete on the layer. It deletes all the information in that layer. Okay, so this is our window that we're going to work with. So I'm going to go and start pulling in the images that I need. Okay, so let's go to my mockup and go to concept sketches. So you've got to produce a series of concept sketches. So I'm going to use these two in conjunction. So I'm going to drag this one in. I'm going to move this. You'll notice you want to scale this into the correct size, and you'll see that this will have a bit of a drawback in terms of pixelation. But the other image I'm going to use is of a better quality and will reflect better in the drawings. If I drag and drop this, and you'll know that this is slightly larger. Okay, great. So I'm going to grab, so these are on two different layers. Now I'm going to move this layer to this side, and I'm going to scale this image up. So scale, grab this information. You can switch on, you can use a snap tool over here. So you can say view snap to canvas edge. Now if you drag and drop, you'll notice that this will snap to the canvas edge. Okay, let's just get it to the right scale and move this information. So let's just scale this up, and you'll notice you'll lose pixelation. What you can also do is you can change the occupancy so you can see the sheet in the background. Okay, so let's just try and get this to a good kind of scale. I'll leave it like that for the time being. That's good for my concept sketch for the time being. And I'm going to say scale. And you'll see it'll scale the image accordingly. Change occupancy back. Great. Now I'm going to select this other image. So this image, I'm going to select it and move this and scale it as well. So let's just say I'm going to move it up to this corner. And I'm going to scale this. And for this example, that will work well. Okay, scale. Now select the images. Select the image. I'm going to delete some of the information I don't need. Just remember, if you scan these in, I'll explain how you can go neaten them up a bit. You'll notice that these don't kind of match each other. So depending on how you scan in your images from time to time, I'm just going to use some levels and curves to address this image to kind of match the scanned in image. These are examples that I've found, so please, this is not, I haven't drawn this information. This is information that I found online. Okay, this image I'm going to move down a bit. So select this image, so it's other image, and select and move this down. My apologies, I moved the wrong one. So let's move that down. Grab that and then move this down. Okay, good. I'm happy with the results. Okay, use the erase tool. So find the erase tool. Make sure you're working on the correct layer. Now you can simply erase the information I don't want. Yes, it's erasing the background, but that's fine. I'll explain now. Or what you could have done, you could have used the paintbrush tool. Alternatively, select the kind of brush you want to use the paintbrush tool, make sure it's your foreground color, and then you can simply, so if you Okay, remember we removed the alpha channels. Here I'm going to do likewise over here. So select that other layer and remove that information for the time being. Okay, I'm happy with the results. Okay, go back to this image. Yeah, I'm going to scale this image just up a fraction more. That's good. Scale. Okay, good. All right. Now, I've got these two images. So this first image, just remember you can also use this pick tool. So when you select an object, so here you can pick a layer or guide. So if you select this layer, it will select the correct. You can see it's jumping between the two layers. Okay. Right, let's first fix this layer. I want to first fix this layer over here. I want to get its color to match. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to colors and we're going to go to levels. Not levels, curves. So we're going to use a curve. Now this curve, what you're trying to do is just try and darken up. So if you zoom in, you're trying to get the images, your sketched images to match each other as closely as possible and make sure that they're crisp. Okay, so I'm going to remove some of that, and then that's starting to work well. They read well, they're crisp. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to press OK. Now that they're the same, what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge these two layers together. So I'm going to merge down. So you merge down, merge layers down. So now that they're one image. The last thing I need to do is make sure that they match the canvas size. So currently then you can see this dashed yellow line. It's not matching the canvas size. So you're going to right click and you'll say layer to image size, and you'll notice now it'll match the image size. We've got a background at the moment. I'm going to leave that there for the time being, but I'm happy with this result. I'm now going to go to color, make sure that the layer is selected, and I'm going to go to color and I'm going to remove the alpha. What it does is it removes the white background for me. This is excellent for sketches. Now with this background layer enabled, I'm going to switch this off. I'm going to drop some color in it for the background, just so that we can review the sketch. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is going to go to the bucket tool, and I'm going to use the bucket tool to show, just to see how this looks. Okay, this reads well. I'm happy with the results. Okay, you can fine tune this information, but yeah, I think it's done a good job, and I think it'll read well on my sheet. Just be careful, sometimes it does destroy some of the information on the drawing, but you can see this is quite crisp. Yes, I should have drawn these to a larger scale and scanned them at a better quality, but for what I'm trying to do, I'm happy with the result. Okay, so switch off this layer. I'm happy with this result. Delete the background layer. Now I'm going to simply export this as a PNG file. Export as PNG and go to the correct folder. And here you can see I've saved my concept sketches. All right, so you're going to say export, export, replace. Now just remember, switch off your compression, make it 0, and you simply hit export. Okay, export. Fantastic. Now, once you've done that, in Inkscape, you're going to go and grab that information. You're going to go to File. You're going to go to your concept sketches, and you're going to drag and drop this in, and you're going to make sure it's a link, press OK. And now what's interesting, you'll notice it'll adopt that scale. Okay, no, sorry, let's just use the correct layer because that layer was off. So just remember that. Make sure that this image is set to the correct image layer. Now, you'll notice that this image size is exactly correct and should fit in perfectly into the space. Okay, yes, you can fine tweak it. You can tweak it a little. Okay, but this will snap into the right location. So grab the image and move the image, and you'll see it'll snap into the right location, and you can fine tweak it later on. Okay, switch this layer off. I don't need that layer for the time being. Okay, fantastic. You can see this fits in and you don't have to scale anything, and this will work well in this position. Now you can drop this down a bit. Because I've made this a PNG file, you'll notice that information can read through it and above it and below it. Okay, so I'm happy with this progress of this thus far. Now the last thing I need to do is go and sort out and bring in all my images for my elevations and that. So typically what we do is, I'm just going to explain this workflow, and I'm going to bring in some tools. So I'm going to open up an AutoCAD file. So in AutoCAD, what I did was I went and created a series of icons, but remember this applies to a DWG file as well. Okay, so open. I'm going to open up symbols. So all I did was I created a series of symbols, and remember your drawing file can work the same. If you're going to use a drawing file, remember put everything on sheets the correct size, and then you're going to print these as PDFs from here. All I did was in this view I drew up these symbols and I exported this. I saved this as a DXF file. So you're going to go and save this as a DXF file. I save this as a DXF file, and you can see the files here. But what you can also do is you can also print these. So you can go to print, so file, print, continue, and here you can make a simple PDF, and you can bring this PDF in. So if you are doing all your drawings in AutoCAD, use your layers correctly, get them to the correct color, put them on a sheet, and then you simply go and print these out, and then you can use them in your document. So for example, I used Revit for this example, but I went and created a print. So I created a sheet and I set everything up on an A2, and everything was at the correct scale. So all of these plans were 1 to 200. So as you see it here, I set this up as a PDF. Okay. Now I've saved this DXF file, so simply what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a new version. I'm going to open a new version, open, and I'm going to open up a new document, and you see that you'll be able to open up a DXF file. So if you go and look at the bottom here, just look for DXF. There we go, and you go and find the DXF file. What's neat is it will open this document. Here you just leave everything as is, and it might ask you to bring in another document or a sheet. You must just ignore that. Okay, so here you can see what it's done is it's put the stuff that was on the sheet in with the other document as well. So that was a mistake. So that, just remember, make sure that everything is in the view. So just delete the stuff that's not irrelevant. And what is neat is you'll notice that this information comes in. So just remember scale bar. So you can make libraries of information. You can save this again and use it again. All that you do is just make these groups. Okay, you want to make these groups. You can make these symbols. There's a whole technique to do that, but for what I'm doing, it's not necessary. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this information. So select this object and hold Shift down, select this object, Control C, go to the other document that you're working in and Control V. Okay, so I'm going to pull this in, and you'll notice this comes in. I want this in the text layer, and this object, and this object. You can also rename this north as well, so you can make it north point. So this object as well, I'm going to put on my text layer. Okay. So remember, you can rename these objects. Scale. Great. Now, go back into GIMP. Open up a new file. So open. I'm going to go and open up my sheet now, my sheet PDF. Now, if you're opening up a PDF, one thing that you must be aware of, you need to set the resolution to the correct resolution. Don't change this. Make sure it's an A1. You can double check that, but you want this to be pixels and inches. If you went to millimeters, this is the correct ratio, and you can see the sheet is to the correct size. But remember, pixels and inches, it must be 300. Now, import. Now, all I did was I broke up and exported pieces of this drawing. You can keep opening it up, cropping the version, so cropping the section that you want every time. So crop this view. You can do some color edits to it, totally up to you. You can crop this, and then you can simply file, save as, export as PNG. Okay, so remember PNG, so just go to different file extensions, but you can simply type in PNG. So all I did was I went and exported these as PNGs, and you can see section A, etc., etc. So I'm not going to cover that step, but what I will do is I'll show you how I brought them in. Okay, so all I did was open up another view, and I simply start dragging these views into the, here you can say always link these in, and they're always to the correct scale, because technically this is a scale on the sheet. Yes, the images didn't fit, but I used the tool that I used to clip. So I clipped all these images. So I'm going to quickly add all these images in and show you the end result. Okay, now you can see that I've gone and put in all of these images, and I've clipped them to the correct scale, and you can see what they look like in the view. Now all that I need to do is, because I created these objects, I'll need to go and place all of these in the correct location on my sheet. So, and you can see I use this guideline to kind of get these in the right location. So here I'm going to go and put these in more or less the location that I want them to be. Okay, once you got one, all that you do is Control D, duplicate it, select it, hold Control down. It will lock it in the right X and Y axis. Move it down, grab it again, drag it down. Likewise with the north point, move this, put this in the right location. You can see it's trying to establish some sort of rule. Grab this, hold down, Control D, and drag this down. Okay. So select this object and that object, move it up a bit. Okay, so I'm going to go and complete this exercise very quickly. Okay, fantastic. So I've gone and added all this information to my drawings now. Now all I need to do is go and add the labels. So right, like you've done in the past, make sure you're in the text layer. Make sure that you're using the text layer. Then you're simply going to copy and move this information down. Okay, so okay, I just want to make sure that I've put this on the wrong layer. Just means it gives you more control, so you can switch off your text layer at any stage if you want to work on stuff in isolation. So if you work smartly and you work with your layers, so it just means that you can switch off your text layer, all your text is gone. Okay, so that's what you want to do ideally. These are just groups, so these are user groups. Okay, they contain a whole lot of text, and you'll see you've got shapes, etc., etc. All right, so that's working well. All right, so you can see I've cropped these up. I used the same process in GIMP to go and edit these images, put them in the right order. The next thing I'm going to do is quickly go and put in all my labels very quickly. Okay, so I've got my labels in play and I've got the half of my sheet kind of set up. Now the next step is just to start bringing in my renders and start sorting it out and fixing up some of this information, making it read better as per my example. Okay, so we can close the other information we don't need for the time being. So if we look at our example, I'm just going to use some of these labels just so that it makes these stand out a bit better. And I'll explain how I'll do that very quickly. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is I'm going to draw a rectangle. Let's just move this text to snap it onto this grid line. Good. I'm going to create a rectangle. Make sure I'm in the text layer again. Now this one will have to work beneath the other one. So this will snap onto here, for example. Okay, drag this up a bit high. That's perfect. Now this will have a fill and it's going to have a gradient fill. It won't have a stroke. Okay, we'll have a gradient fill. So how do gradient fills work? You get different colors. You can add stops, but in essence, you can see how these work. So I'm going to start with a gray. So this will start with a gray color. So let's pick a gray color on this spectrum. Okay. Sorry, I'm working with the wrong one here. Fill. I'm going to make this gray. I was working with a stroke. So let's start with a gray, and it will end with a gray again, but which is quite translucent. So here you can play with the translucency. So as it starts, we can also play with kind of gray. Now, stroke, no stroke. Now, all that's going on is that it's sitting. So in essence, what's happening is I need to move this down. And you might find I'll have to move this quite far down. So this shape will need to go quite far down. So you can literally drag it right down to the bottom. Okay, so you can move this down. You want this below some text. So let's put it up. So you can see you just have to change the order, but you can use this up and down arrow key until you get that correct. Okay. What's neat is if you find the text and this, you can make these a group because they might work together. So group those objects so they become a group. So in future, if you want to use it again, so for example, for my renders, I might want to use the same technique. Okay. All right. So let's just go and start putting in my renders. So same deal. You can go into GIMP and you can edit this information in GIMP. Okay. But I've got a series of renders together. So I'm going to pull these images in. Again, linking them. You can see these are high quality images because they come into the correct scale. Okay. At quite a high resolution, which is what I want. I'm going to set these up. Remember, you can use your snap tools, lock the perspective. So I'm going to lock this to the edge of the sheet and I'm going to lock it to okay. Now I need to remove 2.5 around the border. So all I'm going to do, and this will apply to everything, I'm going to go minus 2.5 and you'll notice, sorry, my apologies, minus 2.5 again because it's be 5 mil in total. Now you can snap this in the center. Okay, what's neat is you can now snap objects into the center. So you can now snap this right slap bang in the center of, grab this image. You can make these snap to the center of objects. Okay, so I'm going to put it on the edge here. So I'm going to move it. Here I'm going to say minus 2.5 and then plus 2.5. So that's in a good location. Okay, so now I'm going to go and bring in all these images very quickly. Okay, so I've got and organized my renders and the same technique. I've clipped them. If you need to clip them, you can clip them. But you can see I was able to put together quite a comprehensive presentation. and in a very structured manner. And what's neat is because these are all links, I can go and edit the images again. If you do break a link, there is a technique in which you can retrieve these. I'll make a separate video to cover retrieving broken links or images, and please come ask for help if that does happen. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to do, grab this group, Control D, duplicate it. I'm just going to go and wrap up these. Okay, you notice what's neat is because it's a group, you can adjust this information. So here I'm going to call this and I'm going to adjust this down. And I can grab this shape and make it a bit smaller. And I can adjust the text in the middle, nudge it down. Okay, in this instance, I might want to change the fill a bit. So the fill option, so select the shape behind the fill. I'm going to change the stop. I'm going to make that a bit, I'm going to grade that out a bit more. Okay, just so it's legible. Totally up to you. And then you can then move this information and put it in the right location. So I'm going to quickly go and add those into the view, and then I'm going to wrap up the video. Okay, so I've added all this information that's required, and you can see we have a complete presentation now. Just remember the whole time, please keep saving this. Keep saving this information the whole time. Depending on some fonts that you use, it can be a little buggy and can crash from time to time. If you don't want to see the guidelines anymore, you can go to View and you can simply switch off the guides. Then you can start having a look at a completed presentation. Okay, so you can see to put presentations together, that's very doable, and you can work in sections. Just remember, keep working in sections. You can see the images are nice and crisp. All that you need to do now is export this as a PDF. So save this as a PDF. So you're going to go to File, you're going to go to Save As, and you're going to go and change this to PDF. Portable document. I'm going to say this is my desktop. I'm going to call this test. Okay, go to Save. Now, what's important is try and keep the resolution to 300 or 150 dpi. I would recommend 300 if this is for a presentation. For a draft copy, you can make this 150. Press OK. Now, once this is saved on your desktop, you can go and open up the test, and you'll notice that it will read as per the document. And you'll notice these are quite large sometimes, depending. So just be careful. You don't want these more than 20 megs. Okay, these do get large because they've got a lot of images embedded in them, but you can see I've used high-res images and it's come out quite clear. Okay,